evening, everyone. It's 5:31. It's Monday, April 4th. This is the first budget workshop for the fiscal year 2024. I'm Laura Dancho, and I will be chairing these committee meetings, of which there will be 4, and it will be noticed once, so everyone should make note of the dates in whatever calendar you choose. So we don't need a quorum, but we do have a quorum. Thank you everyone for being here. And we will start with everything in order, debt service and revenue, and I'm going to hand it over to Chris Timniak. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. Thank you for allowing us an opportunity to present the Mayor's budget this year. As always, this is a tough balancing act. We know that we try to keep taxes as low as we can every year, but yet we still balance the needs of our department heads, the concerns of the citizens of Stratford, and the desire to move the town forward. And this budget addresses all of those goals. We're happy to take the next 4 workshop sessions and work through it with you, answer all your questions. If there's any follow-up questions you have or you want to dive a little bit deeper, please take the opportunity to contact me throughout the course of the day, and I can follow up with the department head. We can get the answers you're looking for. We're happy to provide any answer to any question you have to help further you in the process of understanding the budget. With that being said, why don't we start off this year with the revenue side of things, which you can start on page, what am I looking here?
Is that 6, I believe?
Yeah, page, I guess page 5. You can look, page 5, 80% of the town budget is funded through property taxes. 15.4% is funded through state aid, and 3.9% is funded through permits and fees and other collections we do, whether it's from the town clerk's office, the police office, planning and zoning, health department, anything along those lines. This year, we saw a large increase in revenue collected for current taxes, going up $10 million. I know that number seems alarming. When you break down the formula of how we came to that number, you have to take into mind that the grand list grew, and we also, unfortunately, had to propose a mill rate increase. So those 2 numbers, and Dawn can dig a little bit deeper into that if you have any questions, those 2 numbers are what indicate the increase from $189 million to $199 million for revenue for current taxes. We can go by one, or I can go ahead and I was going to move on to state of Connecticut. If you see anything you want to take the time to jump out, I'm happy to do it. So
Yeah, we'll do it through the chair.
Do it through the chair.
Do you have a question now?
Yes, thank you, Laura.
Go ahead.
Consistent with the statement you just made that you're happy to provide answers to any questions.
Yes.
So on March 10th, and then at the subsequent town council meeting, we asked for a list of the top new and any taxpayers that contributed to this. At the council meeting, you said it was a work in progress. Subsequently, the mayor said that she would hand it out at the first budget workshop. That was an early question, accepted, acknowledged, and you don't have the answers.
I certainly do have the answers. They're sitting on the bench right behind me right now. I wasn't sure how I was going to give you all of the paper and the data at once. I wanted to go through and individually explain what I'm actually handing you, because when you look at the raw numbers, the list is way bigger than I think you were asking for. If you allow me, I can grab them. I don't know that that's an appropriate sidebar for a budget workshop meeting.
But it was deferred to the budget workshop as an appropriate sidebar.
So let's just take a break here, and we're going to go through these one at a time. And when we get to that point in the agenda, then Mr. Timniak can pass out the data.
So,
So let's get through the first item.
Oh.
He has the information that you're asking for, Greg,
well,
so
so there's another significant question related to the first
you want to ask
item.
a second question?
I have many questions
So
that
we're
were
going to go,
presented.
are they having to do with revenues right now?
Oh,
Or is it the-
absolutely, Laura.
So
I
let's
I
let-
am extremely focused, and I only want to
Yeah.
introduce pertinent.
So what we're going to do right now then is let Mr. Timniak finish his presentation, and we'll do questions.
Please don't
after.
use all our time, Chris.
Well, that goes for everyone, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, please. We do have a hard stop at 7, so we're going to get through this as efficiently as possible, okay? Thank you, everyone.
And if this answers, through the chair, if the answers, or if all the questions have not been answered, would you continue the revenue section? In light of that we've,
Yeah.
in the prior 2 years, we've not had a revenue section,
We
given that
did have one
revenue.
last year. So
We
what
did.
We did.
It was
No, we
quite
did.
reluctantly accepted, I recall,
We did.
if we did.
There's no reluctance to having the revenue section, and
So some
It's
of the
part of the-
relevancy around the validity and the predictability of the revenues,
Track of who's-
I sure hope that we have an opportunity.
So,
to
Greg, we've
discuss.
got 4 of these meetings. This is a continued meeting. It is not ending tonight, so we have a lot of time. We do have a time frame tonight, so we understand your first question. There's already an answer to that. We'll let Mr. Timniak go through the rest, and then we can move forward with more questions. Thank you.
okay.
Okay, you can be done now.
Okay.
I have a gavel. I don't want to use it, but I will if I have to. You could be done now.
All right, so moving on to the state of Connecticut revenue, we took these numbers directly from the governor's proposed budget. I do want to caution all of the council members that news out of Hartford is that these numbers will be changing. We are looking forward to the change. We are doing our best to get the information as quickly as we can. We understand that the numbers have changed in years past, leaving the town, and I can highlight the distressed community money, which was included in the budget per the governor's recommendation. We want to make sure that we have the most accurate information for the residents when passage is done. So the state of Connecticut is going to be something we're going to be monitoring for until the budget's passed. As the mayor said in her letter, we are going to ask that the residents of Stratford continue to advocate for the state of Connecticut for as much funding as we can. We have seen the request coming for the Board of Education for more money, and we know specifically that the state of Connecticut is looking to reallocate more money, and we're hoping it's for ECS or special education to help offset that. So you'll see that we have we went from 37 million in state funding to 39 million this year. The next section moving on, we have the town clerk. Now, do we want to go through the town clerk revenue side when the town clerk's presenting, or do you want me just to highlight the differences based upon the conveyance tax increase we anticipate getting moving forward?
So let's,
Yeah, go ahead.
what do you think would be more efficient to do?
Well, I think they're minor increases, and I don't know that unless there's something glaring coming out of the department heads, it's all based upon averages or projections we have from the department heads. So we could specifically ask them while they're up here and presenting at the time, or I could run through why we increased that number right now.
So let's
you-
go through it quickly now, and I'll let you run through, and then we can ask questions after you're finished.
Okay.
And then we can readdress
Yeah,
it again when the
well-
department head's here if we need to.
Right. Okay. So Dawn just pointed, if I flip over to the next page, page 8, we could just look at the total departmental revenues going up from about 12%, from 2.9 million to 3.2 million, which is about a $300,000 increase. We anticipate that number will basically bounce out. If you look back to the conveyance tax increase, that's almost a $150,000 increase. We have noticed, and Susan Pollock, our town clerk, would be, I'm sure, more than happy to discuss the recent land transactions we've been getting, but they seem to be higher and higher and higher as they're definitely getting bigger as they come in, and some of them come in as surprises. So we're happy to include those. And then, yeah. So moving on to page 9, permits and licenses. You'll be hearing from Brian Donovan today, who, Brian Donovan is in the first section, permits, the building permits. And the beach sticker is listed here. So we have an increase going from, as you can see, 900,000 to about $1,050,000. Those increases, the big thing is the building permits. We anticipate a fair amount of permits, knowing what's going on at Sikorsky, knowing what's going to be going on at Center School. We anticipate receiving higher revenue next year through building permits. The final page is, sorry, you want to add something?
Oh, I just said the next section on the next subtotal on page 9 is the investment income, and that's a large increase due to the current interest environment. So our bank now is M&T. We recently negotiated from 0.05 to a 3.25% interest rate. And if the town just has, 25 million sitting all year in that bank, which on average we have more than that, that would, cover about 850,000 of this 1.5. This year we will surpass our budgeted amount. We have some treasuries that we took out that are, at 3.5% to 4%. So I feel very confident with that number. And then the next section is other revenues, and I'll let Chris talk a little bit about that.
So on the other revenues, you'll notice that we have gain of sale on land at $2.5 million, up from 470. That's because we're including the contract, the Center School property in this year's budget. We also anticipate selling other land we have.
Through you, Chairwoman, Mr. Timiak, if you could just direct us as to where exactly you're looking.
On page 10, line number 4701, gain of sale on land. We're conservatively budgeting $2.5 million for gain of land. The council's already voted on one of them, specifically the Center School property. So we definitely anticipate a close of that for next year. Yeah, sure, go ahead, Dawn.
So the last category of revenues is the transfers in, which typically we have WPCA, and this is where you would see if we had a debt service fund transfer in, but we're pretty conservative this year. We only have the WPCA, town road aid, and the police. So you'll notice last year we had the ARPA funding for the current year that we're in, and we also had debt service fund, and we don't have those this year.
So all in, that totals $254.271 million. Revenue increased 2.12% this year. I'm happy to field any questions.
Does anyone have any questions on revenue? Mr. O'Brien, Counselor.
Chris, what would be the dollar figure to keep the current tax rate?
To keep,
Approximate, not $1 million, $2 million, $10 million?
we did this exercise. Was it 2 point? I will get. Yeah, I'll get back. I'll do the math, or I'll look for it when one of the department heads is speaking, and I'll let you know.
And there is the potential to get more state money that might help us move closer to doing that. I mean, being optimistic.
In speaking to, in hearing CCM and talking to other CAOs or town managers across the town, we're anticipating the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee making changes to the governor's recommended budget. To the good. The state appears to have the money to spend, and we're waiting to see what accounts it goes to.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Can.
Thank you, Laura. Why not use debt funding this year to avoid the tax increase?
Well, that money is a premium, and we don't have premium right now to budget.
So, Councilman McCann, we take all of our bonding money from our advisor, Bill Lindsay. As you know, last year was not a favorable bonding market. We were lucky. We didn't have anything coming due at the time. We do have bonding coming due shortly, and we don't have an opportunity to add a premium to this budget. I would like to. First of all, we probably wouldn't be able to do it, one, because the rates are higher, so it's not like we'd be getting, the math doesn't work. Is that the best way to answer it for you?
Follow up, the refinancing of the bonding that we're looking to retire, have we factored in the increased interest cost?
Yes.
So, when we get to the debt schedule, you can see that there's an increase in interest on the debt schedule.
Okay.
And all those numbers, like Chris said, come from our bond advisor, and we thoroughly review it. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the premium would be if the bond market was doing really well, people would pay a premium. They're not paying premiums anymore.
Okay, good.
There was about a dozen other questions that I submitted on March 13th. I'd like to continue to try to get answers to those questions.
I'd be happy to meet with you
We'll go up to gain on sale of land, 4701 account?
Sure.
Okay, and you mentioned Center School. Is Center School about $2 million roughly? In negotiation maybe, but it represents substantial.
Well, the council agreed to sell it to Romano Builders for 1.7 million.
And we have
It
about $1
wasn't
million of other town-owned land that we would look to also. I'm thinking on a net basis. You know, and one net basis is with consideration, the mayor can tell me if I'm out of bounds. We will have liabilities this year in regards to the purchase of land. Why not net that out with the proposed gains?
Can you be more specific?
Purchase.
I don't know what you're talking about.
James Farm and related properties.
Okay, so.
Yes, go ahead, Mayor.
Those are still under negotiation, Counselor. Those haven't been determined yet, and so that's why they're not in this budget. I do believe we have a contingency. If we don't, we will for this. Thank you, Councilwoman.
Don, of the average $25 million that we keep, certainly most of it is from our twice-a-year property tax collections. Does the average 25, does it contain enough every month to pay an unexpected expense such as we just referred to?
Well, the town's cash flow is different than the budget, but the
Yeah.
town does have a fund balance. The town does have, contingency resources. So you know, the town does have funding available for emergency situations.
Okay, I'm going to go to 01301. This is Finance Department miscellaneous revenue. Don, thank you for providing the updated monthly financials. We know that some things come in after the end of the year. Expenses can be posted late, earnings can be recognized late, but as of a few weeks ago, we were just at 20% of the 100% that was budgeted. How do we anticipate?
Well, you'll notice that that is, the finance miscellaneous is, it's pretty much it's a catch-all for any funding that the town gets that doesn't really go to any department. It goes into this miscellaneous account. It's not really specific to the finance department, but it does come under that category. And it was reduced to 75 from 150 for this year's budget, based on, you know, prior years. And so I'm not quite sure about what your question is.
Well, it seems like this year we may come in.
It went down. I put it
So,
in for 75.
I see, but did it, it's $50,000. If Mr. Connor was here, he would say that's a spit in a bucket. But looking at the last 2 years of 60, and maybe this year we'll get to 40, is 75.
Well, I would like to let the council know that we had 2 retirements and a resignation of our treasurer. So we've been a little backed up in the office in terms of posting everything and reconciling everything. You know, we're focusing on the larger accounts, like our tax accounts, to make sure those are reconciled. And so this account might not fully be up to date, but I would be happy to get more information for you.
Fire Department miscellaneous revenue, account 4349 under 16651, or 1651.
What page is that on?
Are you on this budget?
Under fire department?
Miscellaneous? Oh, I see. Okay.
What's the last 4 digits?
It's the bottom of page 7, miscellaneous. It's got 0 in there for fiscal year '24.
Page 7?
So in the interest of time, what I would like to do, we have some department heads here that are going to present. So we're going to, it's already 6 o'clock. We have a hard stop, which
Well,
I actually wasn't
know.
aware of at the time. So let's finish this up. And if you've submitted these questions, Greg, in writing, we can get the answers for you at another time.
Well, I've been waiting 4 weeks for the answers.
So some of your
And
answers
6
are
weeks for
here.
some things that we haven't gotten
All right.
yet because the mayor deferred to tonight. So given tonight was specifically designated.
It was at the council meeting 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and some of the questions were submitted prior to the council meeting.
So we're just going to move on, and you can
Well,
submit.
moving on means skipping over, from my experience.
It doesn't. This is the budget workshop. This is number 1 out of 4.
So-
There's
All right,
plenty
let's
of
go
time.
back. Can we do one more out of the 20 or so that
I
we
want everyone to
submitted?
understand, too, this is a paper budget. It's an estimate. There are not actual numbers on here for the fiscal year 2024. So
There are actual numbers on here.
I said for fiscal year 2024. This is the fiscal year 2024 budget. These are estimates.
Oh,
Okay.
certainly, I understand what
Yeah.
a budget is. I think I learned that in 4th
So we're
grade.
going to move on because,
Well, let's talk about current tax collection.
no.
Given that Chris is going to give us
We're done.
a report.
We're done. We're
Madam
move
Chair.
on.
So we're essentially ignoring revenues again.
No, we're not ignoring. We are going to just
You've
move on.
just said we're going to skip over it.
Point of order,
because we now
Madam
have
Chair.
a hard
You're out
stop.
of order,
Greg.
please.
Just,
You're out of order, please. Stop. We're going to move along with the rest of this meeting. We have
Out
people
of
waiting.
order is being promised answers and then being told, we don't have enough time, we have a conflict, sorry, Mr. Can, we promised you.
It's not a conflict.
we
There's
kicked it-
answers for you. We just don't have them in front of us right now. And I'm sure that Mr. Timiak
I'm
and Ms.
happy
Sabo will be
to
happy
meet
to
with you
provide
right
those
after
to
this,
you.
Councilman Cannon.
But give him his packet so he can look at it, for heaven's sake. And now we're gonna, if there's no further questions on contingent. That other than Mr. Can, Mr. O'Brien.
If we have time after getting through these others, can we just come back to him at the end? Right?
That's a great idea.
Absolutely.
Or come back to them at the next meeting. The meeting is recessed.
The meeting is recessed and continued, as I've explained 3 times already today. It is not the end of this meeting. There's plenty of time. Okay.
We recessed, but now we don't have time again.
So we're going to move on, Mr. Timniak, to the next
Sure.
item. Thank you.
May the record note that we did not skip over revenues. We spent the
skip over
first half hour
revenues, yes.
discussing revenues.
Yes, it's
and then
already
I'm
6
happy to
o'clock.
follow
We have
up
to be
on any
finished by
revenue
7.
questions you have.
But you've not yet followed up on the questions that I had, which means if history tells, there won't be answers.
We're going to move on. Thank you for your
I'll
comments.
disagree
It's
with that.
duly noted, and we will move on. Thank you. We don't answer Mr. Can's questions.
We don't answer Mr. Can's questions.
All right. Yes.
Today.
Do you want to move to
You
debt
know,
service? Okay.
I have your
Dawn's
attention.
going to discuss debt service.
Thank you. '23.
So if you look at page 23, you'll notice that the debt service figure has gone down, even though, as Counselor Can mentioned about the short-term no interest rate has increased, and that's primarily due to the pension bond debt service figure going down. And that's all according to a schedule that we receive from our bond advisor. We have a debt schedule we get every year. It's updated annually when we bond or we take out notes, and we review it prior to the budget with our advisor to ensure we're capturing everything.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Sabo? Mr. Can.
Thank you, Laura. Through the chair, how much bond are we retiring? What do we estimate to be the liability of the increased refinancing of that bond? And where would I see that increase on this page? Going back to your statement that we're retiring bonds, that they'll need to be refinanced, that the interest costs
No,
are higher?
So if you recall, in the past, the pension bonds,
Pension bond, okay.
the bonding, over the years, the town has refinanced, not last year. We haven't done anything this year. So we had a reduced debt schedule, and we're starting to see the effects of that. If you see last year, the pension bond debt service was at 11.2, and this year it's at 10.9 million.
We did this during a town council meeting. You might
Yeah.
recall that.
Oh, absolutely. So the question is, if, I get there's 2 elements to the pension bond, the interest aspect of it.
It's all inclusive in here. The way that the town budgets, it's not broken out, it's all inclusive. I can certainly give you a debt schedule to look at.
That would show premium and interest
Yes.
together for the 12 months of this fiscal year. So I should see a bump in a particular month, or a shift from premium to bond principal, or bond interest, I should say.
I think some of the language is being confused. There's no, premium is not, there's nothing in here for a premium.
Why would you think you're going to see a bump?
I'm going to see a bump in interest, bond interest liability, because you and Don both said there would be one.
So if you look at if you look at short-term note interest, you'll notice that went up considerably from 168. Usually it's around 200,000. So the way that the town operates, we pay down notes every year, about 1.8 million, and that's where that interest amount comes from. That was bumped up. That's the bond anticipation note. And then the bond principal and the bond interest is inclusive of what our current schedule is and what our projected borrowing would be for the next year. So as the town refinanced its debt in the past, we had some savings, and then when we included new debt for this year, it still came out to overall less. Does that make sense?
And you know, while accounts 6902 and 6921 are separate in regards to long-term principal and long-term
Yes. Short-term
interest,
and,
which
short-term
is-
and long-term are separated, yes.
yes. So you can provide a schedule that will show a meaningful decrease in principal that will offset by at least $600,000 the increase in interest.
Yes, we have a schedule.
And when could you provide that schedule?
I could email it, or you could come in and review it with the CAO.
No.
Again, all of
Email in
this-
Excel is perfect.
Okay,
Like,
all of
I don't know
this-
what this is, but we'll hopefully talk about this
I would
before
just
we-
also like to point out that all of this is reviewed, again, with our bond. This is not me, the
Oh,
finance.
should I call them for the answer?
Okay,
Well,
I think we're done
I think you're
here.
being rude
Yeah,
now.
So, Mr. Kent, shut your mic off, we're done, we're gonna move on
When
to the
can you
next.
provide the
She just
schedule
gave you
that
an
would
answer
show
to
the
the
monthly
schedule.
transition?
She's
to
going to email
explain?
you a schedule, Mr. Can. She's already said it. She's going to email you the Excel spreadsheet,
well-
and you can have that all to yourself and spend a lot of time looking at
Can
it.
you volunteer, does it take a day?
It will.
It already
The-
exists,
Yeah,
can you do
so
it?
the current schedule works. The future one you're asking for doesn't exist because we don't have a strike date to go out for bond yet. We're going to go out because we're in great position as the town of Stratford. We're going to go out when the market dictates the best time for us to do it. We're paying one of the best advisors in the state of Connecticut to advise us on this. Okay?
That's
And when that date is given, the town council will be fully aware of it. Just like always, there's no process difference. There's no, we can debate this back and forth of when you're going to get the document,
It
when you're
doesn't
not
have
going
to
to get
be a debate, you must have had a hypothetical, you must have had a projection with variables, I mean, a rationally derived reason to put these two numbers in. If you don't have a schedule because you don't want a schedule, say it. If you have a schedule that was vetted by the bond experts, as you stated, we have the best in the state, then they must have looked at something. If you can share it, what they looked at, you have available, you should be able to
Okay.
send it on a timely
Yes.
basis.
We're currently analyzing May, August, and October. And we're trying to time the market based upon the best information we can have. And we're on top of it.
So I would like to just point out to both of you, whatever documents you plan on sending to the committee, can you just please send them to Margot, and then she'll forward them to all the town councilors on
Be
the
happy
committee.
to.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Finance Administration on page 25.
So finance administration covers the finance director and the executive secretary, and the only changes in here are related to contractual changes. If you go on to finance and accounting and treasury, you'll notice that there's
Page
a
26.
slight decrease on the next page. That's our accounting and treasurer department, and there's a slight decrease due to some changes in personnel. If you go to purchasing, there's no major changes here.
0%.
And then the next one is tax assessor department, and again, there's no major changes here, just union contracts, salary contracts. And the same thing for our tax collector. The one change in here was the part-time amount was reduced, and the overtime amount was reduced, and the outside services, which is QDS, it's our quality data who handles our tax bills, that contract amount has increased, so that line item has gone up. And part of that increase is because we're going to be doing our beach stickers differently this year, and it impacts QDS because they will be verifying tax payment information on, for stickers.
So that's all of the finance areas. Does anyone have any questions? I have one question under tax collector. Your last notation, number 4, I just want to know if that applies to fiscal year '24, or was that last year notation? And then,
Oh, under the highlights? Laura?
yeah.
Is that what you meant? Well, I think
It's just,
that's the same, but I can,
no, that's fine. Does
We
anybody else
have
have any?
seen an increase in more people using online services,
Mm-hmm.
and it's actually pretty good. You'll notice that the line in front of the tax collector office is way less than it used to be when I first started
Mhm.
8 years ago. So it's a welcome relief to have that.
So that's what this line is, that's what,
Yeah. Oh, it's one of the outside services we do.
Yeah. Okay.
We do use.
outside. Anybody else have any questions on any of these categories under finance? Seeing none, we're going to move on to town hall offices. So this, I don't have the page number on this because it's
All right,
added.
page 11, Office of the Mayor. This shows a slight decrease of 1.13%. Everything else is status quo from years past. The next one is the town council clerk. This is Margot's position. A slight increase, which is based upon contractual obligations. There's no other increase to the town clerk budget, town council clerk budget. Sorry, Susan. The Human Resources Department, as I said quietly, the HR director is not available to be with us today on a family situation. His department has a 1% increase. He will be at another meeting. He also does the IT department. So he will definitely come to another meeting. We'll roll it over. If you do have any questions based upon the HR budget, I'm happy to try to answer to the best of my knowledge. If not, we can certainly follow up with Mr. Ng when he gets back. The town attorney budget, don't see Attorney Hodgson or Leclerc right now, and I was texting them all day as they were trying to get it. So they may come later, but you'll see that the town attorney budget is status quo as it was the previous year. They're always available for questions or comments. My budget, the chief administrative officer budget, does have an increase this year. It is based upon salary and staffing going up. As you know, that my office does cover the part-time floater positions, Larry Ciccarelli. I have an administrative assistant. All of those salaries have equaled the nominal increase you see there. The grant writer's also included on there. Thank you, Dawn, for adding that. The register of voters will be next week. The town clerk, if we want to have Susan come up.
Page 17. Hi, Susan, welcome.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. My budget will be pretty brief because it's pretty much the same as last year, except for a few little changes. I've had two increases, and that's account 6102, printing and stationery. I just upped it about $1,000, but mostly this is due to the price of increase of price in paper and printing and cartridges. It's getting a little outrageous, but I think I can make that work with the extra $1,000. And then in account number 6456, which is recording and indexing, we increased that amount by $4,000. And that is due to the increase of the paper that we use for the land record books, and also the binders that are, I guess, made out of petroleum, and that prices went up, so therefore everything goes up a little bit. But just to offset those costs, we just had slight reductions in equipment and service and maintenance by $500. And then account number 6503 for elections, I reduced that amount by $500. This year will be a municipal election, not a mayoral election. Sometimes that's a little bit of a lower cost, but absentee ballot printing could be unpredictable. But I feel comfortable with this number. And then account number 6524, state licenses, I just reduced that by $1,500 from $4,500 to $3,000. And this is the amount, state licenses, that we sell fish and game licenses in our department. And we get to keep $1, and then we send every month money to the state for the license that we sold for them. However, what I've been finding out is that more and more people are finally able to do that at home on their own computer. So we miss out on that $1, but we don't have to send them a whole bunch of money. So I reduced that, and I also feel comfortable with that. And that is pretty much it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Anyone have questions for the town clerk office?
I can talk about conveyance on the revenue side. The town conveyance is number 4306. At this point this year, we've made up to 82%. Okay. Oops. I could tell you, I think we're on track of making the number that we proposed
Page 7.
last year. Let's see, page 7.
Page 7.
Yeah, and I have my own notes. Yeah, so there's an increase already of a, yeah, we're increasing it by that much, 150,000. But just last week, for instance, we received a town conveyance check of, well, there was two big ones, and they combined a total of $52,000 in one day just for town conveyance tax. And that was due to a sale of some apartment buildings that someone paid $19 million for. So we definitely had a nice payday that day. Earlier in the year, we had a sale for about $17 million that also kind of gave us $39,000 just for that one transaction. So I think we're, definitely able to meet what we had projected for last year's revenue, and I feel comfortable with what you're projecting for, this year coming up, budget year 24. It's a good money maker, and people are still buying houses, regardless of the interest rates. People have to sell, and then people buy. So I'm feeling that's pretty stable for us.
Right. It's nice to get the large transactions, but the homes between 200,000 and 350,000, they add up to always get us over the hurdle on this. So that's the conveyance number. Any other questions for town? Oh, thank you for joining us.
Okay,
Thank you. So we're going to save information technology to another day, we were saying?
I would prefer to do that because of
You want to do that now?
Ron not being here. Ron Ing,
So
Mr. Ing.
we're not doing
Yeah,
that today.
I
Yeah.
would we should have economic development come up?
Ms. Mary Dean is here.
Okay. So under economic development is planning and zoning and building. So why don't we start with, well, it looks like Jay Habansky's on his way, so he will,
Page 20, I believe. Am I right?
Well, I'll keep it short because I know we've got a lot going on.
Yes,
So
you
we
do.
proposed no changes to our budget this year. You know, we kept everything pretty much steady. We had some major changes at the state level, requiring some additional training, not only for staff, but also for commissioners. We think that we can work within that budget that we have for our education and travel, since we kind of fixed that last year in anticipation of those legislative changes. So, you know, other than that, we're working on our major project that was set aside through the CIP, which is the 10-year Plan of Conservation and Development, which, and preparing for our zoning regulation rewrite. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Mr. Ken.
Thank you, Laura. Hi, Jay.
Councilman Camp?
The POCD rewrite, that's fully funded and well on its way?
It is, and on target for an adoption hopefully early September. So hopefully before the town council for review and comment sometime towards the end of the summer, with a full adoption for September.
And in regards to the zoning rewrite, do you use existing internal resources to execute that, or would you need more outside resources?
So we already have that secured through CIP funding, which was allocated, I think, or at least planned for 4 years ago. So we're executing that CIP money. We're going out to bid. So no, we're not asking for any additional money.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
did you just want to say revenue for everybody?
Sure.
Let's go back to revenue.
Where are we here? Let's see.
Page 7, planning and zoning revenue.
There we go. So the proposed revenue for the Planning and Zoning Office, and that's basically our permitting fees, $55,000. And that's just for over-the-counter zoning compliance applications, your sheds, your pools. You know, we do have an additional $40,000 set aside for our land use applications that come before the Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, totaling $95,000 in projected revenue. That it's hard to project this number. You just never know. One year you think you're going to get nothing, and all of a sudden it's our busiest year. So difficult to project, but these are pretty much fall within what we've seen in years past.
They're essentially the 3-year averages for that department.
Anyone else? You have another, for the second time. Go ahead, Mr. Can.
Thank you, Laura. If this is out of the question is related to the dispensary. We have anticipated revenue coming in, like a special sales tax. What's its status and estimated, let's say, go-live date? From
For
your
the actual
perspective,
for the actual business.
for the business, we may approve it
Yeah.
in a few months. It may take them a year to get it.
Well, so if it gets approved, I mean, it's right now it's during the deliberation phase from the zoning commission, so it could go one way or the other. If it gets approved, you know, there's probably 3 or 4 months of site work, security work that needs to be done during the tenant fit out, and then, you know, if there's any other permitting that the applicant has to finalize at the state level. So I would think possibly fall.
Okay.
Hard to project how quickly they're going to move, though.
So to drill down on what I think you're getting to is the town of Stratford's allowed 2 under the regulations. We projected 1 for 6 months worth of revenue, is the number which is in the budget.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Any other questions for planning and zoning? Okay, seeing none. Did we skip anything? We didn't skip any. Building inspections. Oh. 40, page 40.
Page 44, building.
Building inspections. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, good luck.
Thank you. Jay?
Yes. I don't know if we,
How you doing? My goal is to keep it shorter than Jay's. Building department has no changes in their budget, and that's, I think we're gonna be okay with the budget that's proposed. Any questions?
you're the only one that's negative. At a negative percentage.
So what's it?
Can you consult with the other departments?
Tell the mayor to make me the CAO. No, I'm not doing that.
Right, do you just want to briefly talk on revenue?
Yeah.
Page 9 in your book, anticipated permits you see coming forward, where we're at
So-
projection-wise right now?
So right now, we're about $100,000 over our projected from, for this fiscal year. We upped it to 874 for next fiscal year. I think we can do it. Obviously, you know, if the interest rates go crazy or something stupid happens, we can't, I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, no economist does. But if everything stays status quo, yes, we can do it.
We are aware of big projects which are going to require permits, which are going to be moving forward.
But if somebody doesn't pull the trigger on it and, says we're going to delay, it's, I always say, I don't have a crystal ball. It's the best estimate.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Kim?
Thank you, Laura. This is a bit of a crystal ball question, but possibly construction that would occur, small scale, put a shed in the yard, large scale, I increase the square feet of my warehouse. Do we just catch up on those as they occur? Has it been a problem? Do we need more enforcement, or is it not an issue?
So your question is, do I need more staff? Is that? No. I couldn't understand the beginning of your question.
Are we missing opportunities to provide oversight that may be outside the permitting process?
No.
Okay, so it was a leading question. Everything that should be permitted is getting permitted, and we're good.
Yeah.
All right.
From building inspections to demolition permits to submitting plans for big developments, we're on top. We're not behind on anything.
We're issuing more permits this year than last year, so obviously we're getting the permits that, are we getting every single one? I'm not, yeah.
Did you add a deck? Did you add a deck or shed? Okay. And how big is the doghouse?
And what is your address?
Yes. Sounds like we should.
Thank you,
send someone
Brian,
out.
for being here. If there's no further questions, anybody else have questions for the building and inspection? Thank you. Appreciate it. So regarding the list, I think we missed town services and agencies.
We did, but I have Mary Dean to talk about economic development.
Mary Dean. Hi, Mary. Dean. Thank you for being here. $37.
So we have no increases in our department other than the already, salaried positions. And we have been very lucky in that we've been able to rely on our Economic Development Commission to really fund most of our marketing, and we've done a really great job over the last couple of years with some, and we've done planning through this year with how we're going to market to businesses and outreach. And so they've been a real advocate for us, and it has provided us with the ability to not have to ask for an increase or look for funds to do that. And just what Brian was up here talking about permits, we've had a significant number of permits that have come through this year with some really large projects that we anticipate will begin next year over and above the center school. So we're very excited about that. And people, I just have to say, you know, Jay was here, Brian was here. We get a lot of compliments from our businesses that the service they get from these departments is really just superb. They really provide concierge service to our businesses and developers that come in. And one of the other things we've been trying to do is when we get a whiff that a developer is interested in a property, we've done a lot more outreach to try to move a development towards what we'd like to see in Stratford. So we bring them in, sit down with them, talk about where it's located, what we'd like to see. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but we're trying to have more control over, you know, developments that technically we have no control over if a private developer comes in and it's allowed by zoning. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Will you quickly talk about the community side of your department?
Oh, sure. So we have a tremendous amount of community outreach with the, we have obviously our Celebrate events, which have grown and expanded. Karen Sportini in our office has started a committee for our museums and has really brought them in, and we're doing a museum month in June, and so we've tried to do a lot of outreach, tourism, and trying to bring, you know, more and more to the town of Stratford for not only our residents, but those that don't live in Stratford.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Does anybody have any questions? Ms. Shake.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chairwoman. Good evening, Mary Dean.
Good evening.
Regarding, you know, trying to advertise and marketing the town, I'm just curious as to why there was a decrease from the previous year, 23, from 12,000 to 9,000. Did you find that, was there excess of funds, or?
Yeah, it was in community events because we were getting more.
Is it a typo?
Oh, because we have our businesses that sponsor it. So the more sponsors we get, and we get more and more each year, the less we have to take from our money. So I really should have brought that up, because in addition to the Economic Development Commission, which supports us, our businesses support us in a huge way with the activities that go on in Stratford. And it provides us with the ability to outreach and be on top of how they're doing, expanding, et cetera. So that's been truly a savings for the town of Stratford.
So then if I could just ask a follow-up question, the dues and subscriptions, that 3,000, there was a decrease in the advertising and an increase. So what is that?
So what I did was, we have CoStar, which we had talked about last year, which enables us to be able to have a better list of all our contacts and be able to more easily, you know, COVID made us just say, okay, we need to have at hand, you know, as much as we can in terms of our businesses. So we reduced 6502, which was, where's 65?
Yeah, if you look at notation number 2, Caitlin, on the sheet, it explains 3,000 taken from one account to the other.
You know, our finance director gives us a slap on the wrist if we don't take money from where it's supposed to. So we really just traded. We didn't ask for more, just so that it could be more accurately depicted. That's what it is. It's a dues and subscriptions.
So it was more efficient.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
Creating an efficiency.
So we follow
Yes.
the lead with Dawn.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. we're all set here. Any other questions?
Yeah, I can make a comment about the folder, trifold that your office is working on about all the museums. And they were able to find funding elsewhere, which is nice.
The Economic Development Commission. The work is done in our office, but it's being funded by the commission.
Yeah. I mean, this has become a real tourist attraction, especially the African American Museum, the Connecticut Air and Space Museum, the Veterans Museum, of course. So the next step we all have to work on is getting the state to put a sign on the highway for us. And that's a battle.
I can work on it for you.
Is that who Karen Sportini should reach out to? Laura Dancher.
Thank you, Mary. Are there any other questions? Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you. So I think we skipped over town services and agencies. Is that a separate category or back to 17?
On page 18
Yeah.
and 19, town buildings. The town buildings page is basically the operational side of running all of our buildings, excluding the Board of Ed buildings. We take our best estimates we have from the current bills we have. We'll reach out to some of the companies. They'll let us know what to anticipate to put in, whether it's Aquarian or UI, for the right estimate for the following year. One of the frustrating things I look at every year, items which bother me are the fire hydrant number. Is a very expensive number to keep our fire hydrants pressurized, coming in at 1.6 million. We double check that number multiple times to make sure it's right. 1.6 million, so people just see a fire hydrant, they drive by it. It's a big number behind that. The other thing, too, is the street lights. That number keeps going up and up, and if you remember, about 6 years ago, we converted to LED street lights for the town. We don't own the street lights, but we have to pay the bill for them. The number is still less than what it was about 7 years ago, but the LED number keeps creeping up as we see things getting more and more expensive. Utilities across the board, we know are increasing. Aquarian, that's not on this page. We have water in here. Aquarian was talking about a large rate increase, which didn't come through, which we're very happy that didn't come through. Where? Yeah. Here you go.
Yeah, so the phones have gone up. That's based on actuals. We did an audit of all the cell phone and the landline uses and cleaned them up. And we're still in the process of cleaning up some of the landlines because the town has a lot of them that could just be emergency. They don't actually have a phone next to them. So that number, I feel, is a very accurate number. And like Chris mentioned, the hydrants number, we actually get a letter from Aquarian, and then we reach out to somebody and have them calculate it for our fiscal year. So that number I feel very confident with. So I think for town buildings, we've estimated as best we could given the circumstances. And then on the next page is agencies, and these are all the commissions and different committees that the town has, and this is a status quo budget.
So we reach out to the committees or agencies if there's going to be any changes or they see any increases coming along, or we'll also figure if they didn't use the money the previous year, we'll ask why that didn't happen. We'll make an adjustment if we come to that conclusion. This is one of those sections of the budget which everybody knows somebody on one of the committees, and you can check in and make a recommendation. if things come along later in the budget process. We usually reach out for these numbers in early January. There's lots of meetings between, when we first talk about this until the budget passes in May. So sometimes committees will have different priorities which come up. So you may or may not be contacted about an increase or not.
A quick question on that. Do you feel that it's prudent at this time to add a line for the Fair Rent Commission? Or is that too premature?
I think we probably should. The Fair Rent Commission, it hasn't been formalized, right? So
Right.
I think it would make sense to put in there. In fact, I'd actually like that. And when I think about wanting to let the state of Connecticut know that we're on top of it,
Yeah, that we're on record
and that
for
we're
next
actually
year.
preparing for it, I think that makes sense.
Madam Chair?
Wonderful
Mr. Pia.
recommendation.
Oh, through you.
Go ahead.
The heating oil, were you guys just able to lock in at future rates on that, or is that a combination of, because I know we've been replacing a lot of boilers over the last 6 years in town too, and I'm just curious.
So yesterday, it's funny, you said that we had a meeting with Constellation, and I talked to a bunch of people about this already. He brought in 2 graphs 5 years ago and where we are today, and went over like the supply and why things are getting more expensive. We were currently locked in at like 8.2 cents. We're now looking at about 10 cents for the futures. He offered us different products to basically extend and blend. What we did come to the conclusion was that buying electricity in the shoulder months is the best way to do that. So we set a strike price with them, and we'll go back and forth and see if we hit it. We're anticipating a dip based upon what he sees in the market. We're hoping for it to be early May. Our rate lock is up in November. So he's willing to work with us, and that's just for the energy distribution. The oil and gas is one. I know Public Works Director Renee Sarah will be talking about the increases she's seeing in the gas, whether it's diesel or not. But we know that those increases are coming as they ask us to either conserve or move off of.
Any further questions? Mr. O'Brien, go ahead.
Chris, the lights at the ball fields, where does that show up? Is that under electric, under street lights?
It should be under electric. Anytime there's a new traffic light or any kind of light that comes on, it comes onto our bill.
I was happy to hear last night that the LED projects at DeLuca and Short Beach have been completed, so that will be helpful, I think.
Replacing those lights will save us some electricity. I have not received an update on what that segment of the bill will reduce to now that we have more efficient lights there yet. If we do get that prior to you voting on the budget, I'm happy to suggest an amendment to reduce.
Well, where does that come up in?
That'd be under electricity.
On page 18?
Is that- We're on page 18. Electric.
It says electric. It's electric. Or 550.
So a few years back, all the buildings, all the town accounts were consolidated under this building category instead of being spread out in different budgets. So everything is under town buildings.
And of course, that's another expense that we cover for the Board of Ed.
So streetlights are separate from electric, it looks like on this list. And then Board of Ed buildings are not reflected in here, right? Like all the solar panels that we have on all the buildings, is that? oh,
No, that's not in here.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a few things that we pay for, like flood pool and things like that.
And that's reflected in this
Yeah.
electric bill? And do we know if the solar panels on the flood building are helping with that electric bill, or no?
I don't,
For the flood?
I think the
Through
building
you-
committee
through
has
you,
been
Madam
looking
Chair.
into that.
Yes, that, even though that's 20 years old, that PV system, it is still generating electricity. You're welcome.
Thank you. Any further questions? Are we? So we still have a few minutes of time at 6:41. Mr. Can, if you would like to continue some of your questions,
wanna go
I
over
can give
the-
you like 5 minutes.
We didn't discuss the contingency page, if you want to
Contingency?
quickly go over
I thought
that.
we did
Page
that.
22.
Contingency accounts is page 22. Never mind.
So contingency is increased, and contingency, some of these line items are based on contractual settlements. So you'll notice 6603, there's an increase, a substantial increase there. Anytime there's open union contracts, we come up with an estimate that we put in the contingency line. We don't put that in the salary line item. Also, the workers' comp, as you're aware, there's a separate fund, an internal service fund for workers' comp and another fund for health, and we move this amount over into that fund, that full amount. So this isn't based on actuals, it just gets moved over, but that is a number that is estimated from PMA, which manages our workers' compensation. Also purchased insurance, we meet with our broker and we review what the estimated liability purchased insurance costs are going to be for the town, and that's where we come up with that number. So these are all based on either estimates from brokers or consultants that handle those areas for the town, or on salary estimates.
I'd like to add, we've met with Gallagher Insurance 3 times in the last 3 months. We're basically meeting with them monthly. The insurance industry is changing pretty rapidly. We have, being the town of Stratford, we have a tremendous amount of exposure, as you're aware, whether it's buildings, whether it's, auto, vandalism, everything falls in there. So we met with him last week. The number I asked him specifically, is this number still good? When we go out to lock in, he anticipates this number being very, very accurate, with a slight chance of a reduction. He manages about 20 other towns, and he's looking at the renewals for them as well. So that's where we came up with that number. It has been something we've worked hard on. We've studied that number a lot.
Questions?
Through you, Madam Chair.
Mr.
To your point, Chris, this is nationwide, this is townwide, this is residential-wide, this is commercial-wide. There's been drastic increases in premium costs in the liability industry in the last 14, 16 months. So the amount of work that you're doing on it, it's in line.
Any further questions?
Through you, Madam Chairwoman. So the significant increase with the physical exams, 6624, from $50,000 to $120,000. Did we have issues in 2023 or so far
So
regarding
there's
that particular?
one of the exam requirements we do for current employees has, for one of the departments, has had an increase when HR Director Ng is here. He can better define exactly what that is. I don't want to specifically name the department tonight and the reasons which go into it, but that was something we called out and asked him specifically on. It's for, there's an increase in physicals for new hire employees, and there's an increase in physical cost for current employees who have to remain up to date.
So are there any further questions on tonight's topics? So, Mr. Can, we have a few minutes.
If I could talk to, through you, talk to Chris and Don for a few minutes after we adjourn regarding this paper,
Yes, I'd be happy to.
and we can pick up other revenue items
Perfect.
at
As
the
we
next budget
continue.
workshop.
So, right now, it is 6:46.
Laura,
Go ahead.
quick question, Chris. Page 8, sanitation coupon book, sanitation miscellaneous revenues. Is that primarily for the transfer station?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's exactly what it's for.
I just have a, through you,
Go ahead, please.
regarding our energy consumption, have we ever considered as a town possibly the community choice aggregation program or anything along that, those measures, just
Councilman
curious.
Rice, we talked about that yesterday with the energy consultant who came to visit us. One of my hesitations is making a decision for the community because there's so many residents who are in their own individual, their individual circumstances. I don't want to tell people they have to either opt in or opt out, and sometimes. Depending upon the market for the individual choice, someone may have a wonderful decision 5 years ago to lock in at 8 cents, and they don't want to get involved in us raising the rate.
Well, we could do an opt-out if people have great, but I think on a whole, if it's going to save the town money and residents in general, why wouldn't we consider it and let those individuals opt out if that works better for them individually?
Right. So there's more to it than how you're describing it. There's individual choice, which is involved in that, and then the opt-out requires someone to know that the town opted in on their behalf, and now they have to opt out. There's a lot of detail which goes in the paperwork, and getting 52,000 residents on the same page is something which is going to be more than just a brochure or a pamphlet being sent out by an energy sales.
Well, one last question. Was there any sort of projection on savings for the town if we did, approve this program?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was interested in it, and, we brought it up with our consultant for our contract renewal conversation. And in their experience, if you don't do the, if you don't do it where people have to physically go in and opt out and you force everybody in, the savings isn't there. And that was the bottom line. And in addition to, it wouldn't be something that we'd be able to do for the next year's budget. It would take a long time to do it. So that was, if the savings wasn't going to be there and it was going to force people to have to opt out, it didn't seem like it was a reasonable thing to do.
To answer your question specifically, no number was given of how much savings which would have been done. He was not able to do the calculation there. It was a general dialogue about a program he was offering. We did spend a fair amount of time discussing the pros and the cons of it. So.
Wow. I just have heard so many great things, and we look at other cities who have similar programs, just thinking it might be of value for us to
Do you have
to consider.
an example of a city?
Like a Wallingford and other cities who have not the same, it's not the exact same sort of program, but similar style of
Okay, thank you. We're going to move it to the mayor, please.
Thank you. Because Wallingford is a Muni Electric. They have their own utility companies. It's very different than what we do. So we can't compare ourselves to Wallingford. And Kim, Councilwoman, I was in the energy business buying for decades. And it would be very hard for us to get all 20,000 households to be on the same page to buy electricity from our organization. And the only way, the biggest bang for your buck is volume. So if we got all 20,000, and maybe some businesses, which we were considering offering through the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, because they have a program too. It just, many businesses as well as residents, I'm one of them, I buy my own third-party generation. I don't go through UI because it's more expensive to go through UI. So I don't know if necessarily this program would benefit me personally. Thank you.
Just one last point, if it's okay with you. I don't think we should speak for the residents. They might be okay with it. We should take the time, like any changes we make, and educate our residents and let them, because again, if we can get a number, the volume that you guys are talking about, it would be to everyone's benefit, including the town and the residents. So just want to put that out there. I've heard great things about it. Many towns and states are moving towards in this direction. So again, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chairwoman, I have one question.
Go ahead, Michelle.
One question. Regarding salary increases for appointment positions, generally across the board, it's roughly between $2,700 and $3,500 of a salary increase. But correct me if I'm wrong, economic development was almost $8,000. I'm just trying to understand the rationale.
3 employees there.
That's just for the director position.
Can I talk to you afterward about it? I can look into it.
Oh, are you looking on the salary? Yeah.
So on page
So-
68 has the general fund
Yeah, it was-
salary and wage schedule.
Economic Development Director, salary.
It's on page 68 to the right. We had a lively discussion about salary increases last year and, aware of the need to try and recruit and retain staff here in town. So if there's another opportunity, I have tomorrow off. If you have time, I can come in before we have.
I certainly do have time. I apologize right now. All these, I'm having a hard time with my eyes. I want to take my contacts out.
It's okay. It took me like an hour and a half to go through the whole book just to go back and forth from last year
Okay, I'm trying
to
look
this
at
year, but just trying to understand.
Yeah.
We can table it to the next meeting as a follow-up,
Okay,
if
we
that's,
can get the information.
just so you're
Okay.
aware, you and Dawn.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no further questions, we're going to recess this meeting at 6:54 PM, and we'll reconvene tomorrow at 5:30. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight.